gather here today, I'd like to acknowledge that we're on Treaty 6 territory and the homeland of the Métis, and we pay our respect to the First Nation and Métis ancestors of this place, and we reaffirm our relationships with one another. So thank you again for being here. I'd like to thank our two technical people in the background helping to make this happen, and that's certainly Erica Saunders and Bonnie Zink. Without you, this wouldn't happen. I'd like to welcome you from wherever you are, from Saskatchewan. One thing about this pandemic is it's really helped us to understand that while we can't all be together in person, Zoom is the best thing that we've got right now. Just a little bit about our coalition before we start. As I said, we're a chapter of the National Coalition, and our goal is to bring together a variety of individuals and groups such as early childhood educators, poverty groups, women's groups, labor, early intervention, basically anyone who is interested in supporting the development and implementation of a universal early learning and childcare system for children, family, and care providers. A long time waiting for all of us here in Saskatchewan. I know many of you will echo that. And the brief overview of the reason that the coalition came to fruition was because of the federal government's commitment to childcare this year. It's exciting, it's daunting, it's overwhelming, but we are resolved to get this thing done for Saskatchewan. Some of the ways that we operate or how we achieve the goals of the coalition is through advocacy, education, a variety of messaging, strategies, meetings, and hosting things such as this webinar this evening. We are firmly of the belief that people, and that's you, and the users themselves often know better than governments what the problems are and what the solutions are. And tonight is all about that. So how this is going to work this evening is we have a variety of speakers that we've asked to speak tonight who've come from a very wide range of rural backgrounds here in Saskatchewan. And we also have our national director and the national director of the Aboriginal Head Start programs to speak to us about strategies and how we can make this childcare initiative come to fruition. What we're going to really encourage you to do this evening is to put your questions in the chat. This webinar is going to be 1 hour, but at the end of 1 hour, we are going to, for those of you who want, we will come back. I will end it for those who would like it to end, but for those who would like to stay for another 15 minutes, we will put you in chat rooms and you would have an opportunity to speak. And at that time, you can address some of the questions or concerns that you might have. And then we will come back and end it yet again. So with that, welcome again to everyone. Again, thank you for taking the time. And thank you to all our speakers. The first speaker that we have tonight that I'd like to introduce you to is Tanya Mazurek. And Tanya hails from northeastern Saskatchewan. And Tanya is an early childhood educational professional, a speaker. She's been a childcare director, a parent, probably a board member. She's kind of done it all and brings a wide range of experiences from a rural background. So welcome, Tanya.
Thank you. So I am here really to chat a little bit about rural childcare from a director's perspective. So I've been in the field for over 25 years. The first 7 to 8 years, I was in a rural setting, in a couple of rural settings, running childcare facilities. So that's all I knew. And then my husband and I moved to Care River, Saskatchewan, which is northern Saskatchewan, not north, but northern. We're right along the forestry line, along the Manitoba border near La Paz. So if you know where Tisdale and Nipawin are, that's about where I am. So like the train turns around in Carrot River, we are rural. So we moved to Carrot River and I was walking down Main Street and I had parents who already knew who I was and were really excited that I was trained in early childhood, had experience working in childcare, and they, pregnant moms were saying, let's do this, let's do childcare in Carrot River. And so I did that. In about a week, I had a licensed family group home up and running. I had met with a couple families, and the first thing I learned was that the typical flat rate for childcare that you pay, you pay in advance, you pay so much per month, that was not going to fly in rural Saskatchewan. It was made very, very apparent to me that I needed to have hourly rates, daily rates, and monthly rates. And that in rural Saskatchewan, so in Carrot River, Saskatchewan, we have forestry, we have peat moss, and tons of farming. So lots and lots of shift work. So that typical day of open from say 5:30 or 6 in the morning till 6 at night, that wasn't going to fly either. Seasonal, so lots and lots of farmers who needed childcare only during seeding and harvest, and that was really about farm safety, and I really did lots of work with that. In fact, we ended up keeping our center open till midnight during those 4 months of the year. So that was about meeting the needs of our rural community and making sure that our children were safe and away from the equipment, and that our farmers had the option of, really good quality work, that they didn't have to all of a sudden run into town and grab their children. They could actually, the efficiency on the farm was improved. So I learned really quickly that rural childcare is very, very different than running a childcare center in the city. The other thing I learned was that my rates were way, way, way too high, and nobody would come near me. And I get that. I get that parents in a rural, so if you're in Carrot River, Saskatchewan, you're paying about 3 times the price for your, fresh vegetables, fruits, meats, milk. I've done lots of work up in way, way northern Saskatchewan. You're paying $20 for a jug of milk. So the cost of living, when lots of people say, oh, the cost of living in Carrot River is really, really cheap, I shake my head and say, no, actually it isn't. If I want to go see, if my children need to go for any kind of special appointments, we're driving 3-6 hours to see specialists. We are paying 3 times the price for toilet paper and shampoo and soaps. And so running a childcare facility is actually quite expensive in Carrot River, Saskatchewan. I'm paying over $5,000, say, in the property taxes, and then I'm paying a lot of money. If we started bringing in bulk foods, bulk paper towel, toilet paper, but then I'm paying shipping costs to get it to Carrot River. And in a small town, everyone knows you need to support local. We need to keep our local co-op, grocery stores, pharmacies running. So we need to support local as much as we can, and to be a part of this community. But we also learned that we also needed to buy stuff in bulk, and that works, but we're still paying tons of shipping costs to get it there. So my closest center is about 2 hours away, which is Prince Albert, and Saskatoon is 3 hours away. So it is a huge drive for any of my families or myself to get materials and access what we need for our center and our children. So I opened my family group home, very quickly realized that in rural Saskatchewan, childcare is not just full-time. And I know it's not in the city as well, but we have lots and lots of shift workers and lots of seasonal workers. So I needed to be really flexible with my hours. I realized that my 12 spaces wasn't enough. I all of a sudden had too many, and we had to open a center on Main Street, Carrot River. We were licensed for 41 children, but if you can believe this, I had 80 children registered there because I was the only licensed facility for miles and miles and miles and miles. And lots of children were part-time. So we were able to maneuver through 80 children, but if you can imagine as a director trying to work 80 children into your program when you have 41 spaces, it's a lot of work. And deciding who gets those spaces too, because everybody's work is valued and their time is valued and their children deserve quality care. So the other thing that I realized really quick is that their idea of quality childcare was the lady down the street who had this really big TV. So they actually said to me, Tanya, you got to check out this lady. She provides care in her home and she's amazing. And I said, oh, what's so amazing about her? And they said, she's got this really big TV in her basement and the children love it. So then that became a little bit of a barrier for me as well. I now have to educate, what is quality childcare? What does that look like? Why are the early years so incredibly important? And I know regardless of whether you're urban or rural, you're faced with that in society. I get that. So we had to do lots of educating. And so then we, of course, opened our beautiful space on Main Street, and I had to staff it. Well, guess how many early childhood educators who are trained live in Carrot River? Well, maybe 2, but they had already been scooped up by the school and they loved their job at the school. So none, no early childhood educators who are trained available to work in Carrot River. And who is going to move from the city to Carrot River where we have 0 housing? There's no housing. There, if there is, they're very old buildings and you're paying a lot of money because it's hard to get a place to live in Carrot River, Saskatchewan. There's not a whole, we don't have big apartment blocks that you can just rent an apartment and live there for a bit. So nowhere for people to live. In fact, many directors may, I don't know if you do this, but I've had early childhood educators living with me for years because they have nowhere else to live. So I give up part of my house and the space for my own children, for their life, for early childhood educators to live with me because they have nowhere else to live. And the few places that are available in my small town community, they're paying a lot of money for it. And they can't afford that when they're making $12 to $13 an hour, which, by the way, is what we're making in rural Saskatchewan, because apparently our cost of living isn't very high, which it is. So that became a really big issue. I had trying to hire people. I had people saying, yeah, I'll come to Carrot River and work for you. I could fly in next week. Yeah, no, you can't fly to Carrot River. You can't hop on a plane and fly to Carrot River. Do you have a vehicle? Because you're going to have to drive to Carrot River. And people don't. They're starting in the field. They have no money. They don't have vehicles to drive to Carrot River. So I don't know how many directors have done this, but I've had to hop in the car and drive to Saskatoon and pick up people and help them move to Carrot River. That's how desperate I am to get workers with training to Carrot River. So that's rare for me to actually get someone to relocate to my small town rural community. So often I'll hire young people who are coming out of high school. You would be amazed how many parents called me and said, okay, my daughter's calling tomorrow and she really, really wants to work in childcare. I need you to discourage her. And I say, why? Like, we need workers. We need people in the field. This is a great job. No, I know what you guys make there, and that's not a career. And I don't want my daughter working in that. So you need to discourage her. Well, of course, I didn't know what to say to that. Now I know what to say, and no one calls me anymore because they know what I'm going to say about it. But that's the kind of thing that I'm dealing with. And I know you're all dealing with it, but how do we get trained early childhood educators? So the next thing is we train them. So of course we've got to get them trained in Carrot River, Saskatchewan. And that's a barrier because, like I said, they don't have money, they don't have vehicles. Some of them don't have internet because, you know what, if you're paying a whole lot of money for your place to live and you don't have access to anything because you're in a small town, you don't have money for internet or a computer. So how do we get them trained? There's no college in Carrot River. So we need to, I'll tell you what I've done that's actually been successful. I will drive to one community, and I've taught at Cumberland College before, so I've taught the classes. I'll drive to one community, pick up some early childhood educators, drive them to another community, and we get there right when the children are finally gone home. Nobody's eaten yet. We prepare a meal together, and then we sit down and we study together. And I get as many laptops as I can, because how else are they going to do it? There's no college for them to go to. They don't have a computer and they don't have a laptop. So doing distance learning isn't an option. Other than that's the only way to do it. but they want that face-to-face with their teacher. So that's what I became, as a tutor to them. And they don't have transportation to necessarily get to where they need to be for that Wi-Fi. So I had to provide the meal, the transportation, the laptops. So educating in a rural community is really, really hard. It's really tricky. So finally we get them educated, and they've got maybe their first level 1. And you know, just this last 6 months, I had 2 educators come to me. One said to me, Tanya, I work from 9 in the morning till 6 at night. I am completely and totally emotionally and physically drained. Then I go home, I make supper for my kids, and I study, because I need to study in order to work here. And she told me her daughter is failing in school and she didn't even know it. She's so exhausted from her job and studying that she can't work in the field anymore because her own family is suffering. And how many of you can say that we're working so hard to keep our programs alive, and we're giving everything in us to support these children and families, and our own children and families are suffering at home. This is what I hear all the time. So we're educating them, and then they're leaving. So either they're going to the school where it's not as hard work, maybe they have less hours at least, and holidays and that kind of thing. Or honestly, I have had one lady came to me the other day and said, Tanya, I have dreams for my life, and I can't reach. I want to travel someday in my life. I want to get married. I want to buy a house, and I can't do that here. And she left. She went to the city and got a better job and more money. And it makes me so sad. So, you know, I have no casuals, none. And I get it. You don't have casuals in the city either, but like none. I mean, none. So if someone can't show up to work because they're sick, tired, actually want a holiday, their child is sick, they need to go see a doctor, guess who has to fill in?
You.
Yeah. And so I'm sad. I'm excited about what's happening. I'm sad for directors who are exhausted and tired. And the training I have in my 25 years been training new people over and over and over and over again. And I'm constantly training people, and I'm exhausted. And so I think there's so many things that we need to talk about in rural childcare, but I'm excited about where we're headed, Sue.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me talk.
Tanya, I feel your angst and your pain, but I love your enthusiasm, and I think we're really lucky you're still there. So hopefully things will get better for us. We do have this big opportunity. So thank you, Tanya, and thank you for starting to paint a picture for us. Our next speaker that I'm going to call on is Ashley Houston, and she also has Kimiko Shimoda, who is with her. They are from the Rosetown area, and they can continue to paint a picture for us on what it's like in rural Saskatchewan for childcare. Welcome, Ashley.
Thank you, Sue. So yeah, a lot of this might end up being a bit repetitive. But a couple things I wanted to touch on were staffing, I guess COVID in general, and new spaces. So in terms of the pandemic, I really felt like childcare centers were completely overlooked during all of this, right from day one. They've really navigated these last 2 years with like little to no information or help. Our director would touch base with our ministry consultant, and our consultant was finding out about any of the information at the same time the general public was. Within minutes of us all watching kind of these latest live updates and on the edge of our seats wondering what was coming down the pipe to us, people are phoning our director asking, okay, like, what does this look like for daycare? Like, what does tomorrow look like? And we don't have an answer for them. So we are really just doing this day by day, phone calls, text messages, like, I guess we'll see how this plays out. And nobody knew what was happening. So I really just felt like kind of the world came to a bit of a halt. And thank God for our childcare workers. They stayed open. They had to figure it out on a day-to-day basis, and like kudos to them. They were amazing through this whole thing and continue to be. My second is staffing. Currently, right now in our center, we have room for about 4 full-time vacant positions and we've been trying to hire these positions for close to a year now, and we have no luck finding people. We are advertising locally, online, social media. We've contacted post-secondary institutions trying to get into job fairs. If they have hiring boards, send emails out to any of the ECE classes saying, you know, we will take people, we'll take you for an internship, anything. We need the bodies. We just recently have gone as far as applying to the Saskatchewan Immigration Nominee program, so we can try and hire qualified people internationally. We're offering referral bonuses to our staff, parents of kid care, just again to try and find anyone to come work. That for us then kind of ties into trying to keep our current staff on board. And Tanya, you kind of touched on this. We just had a meeting here, gosh, it must have been last month. We had an employee come to our director and say, you know what, I love my job. I love these kids. I love I love my coworkers, but I can't do it for this wage anymore. And like, I need to start looking for other work just for the financial aspect of it. And I totally get it. And don't get me wrong, I really do love my kids with all of my heart, but like, hoofda, I don't know, you cannot pay me enough to sit with my own 2 kids for 9 hours a day and entertain them. So for some of these teachers, when you have a ratio of 1 teacher to 3 babies or 1 teacher to 5 toddlers, like for 9 hours a day, if not longer, this is a lot for, like you said, Tanya, anywhere from $12 to maybe $15 an hour. Like, it's tough. This then kind of turns into how we can't actually accommodate all the kids in our service area right now. Currently, we are at max capacity for our center just based off our current staffing issue. But again, if we had 4 more full-time staff, this could look so different and we would be able to accommodate so many more families. And I mean, I think normally if we were full-time, we probably still would have a wait list. And I mean, we have a wait list right now, but not because we can't, it's because of our staffing. We can't actually find anyone to come in and work. This kind of then ties into new spaces being granted. So our kid care, we were awarded, I think it was 17 new spaces. We also have plans for a new center to be built, hopefully sooner than later. And again, this is wonderful. And I think we will have zero problem filling all of these spaces. But again, we can't find the staff to work for our current situation. So now to throw in 17 more spots, I don't know, it seems kind of scary. I would just love to see our ECEs being paid more. I just think it takes a special kind of person to do this. I would love to see more help finding qualified workers. I know we can hire, if I decided to, I could go apply at Rosetown Kid Care and be given an opportunity to work here, but I can only work now 64 hours in a month, which I guess is better than nothing, but this makes it very hard for the director to schedule this in. It doesn't necessarily give another family an opportunity to say, hey, I can now take your kids full time when I can only work 64 hours a month. You know, until now, maybe I've been accepted to start my level 1 schooling. Then can I apply for my exemption to now be able to work full time? And like you said, again, Tanya, we have many workers right now who, you know, are level, they have their exemptions and they're able to work, but now yeah, some of them have families. Some of them are single moms that have 2 kids at home and have now worked a 10-hour day, have to go home, help their kids at school, make suppers, just do life in general, but now have to find time to take classes, all while being paid $12 an hour. I can't really fathom it, to be completely honest. Yeah, sorry, that was kind of a ramble. That was kind of all I had to really touch on. Thank you for this opportunity. I will pass it on to Kamiko if she had anything that she wanted to touch on.
No, not really. You said it all. I would just say, yeah, we just really need to raise that bar in the wage ranges so that we can get some more subsidies for our staff. I mean, the subsidies coming in for families for their childcare, of course, it's wonderful. But again, if we don't have the staff to accommodate that, then we're nowhere further ahead. So thank you.
Oh, Sue, you're muted.
Mute, unmute. There we go. Thank you, you guys. Yeah, we're starting to hear a theme here very quickly on compensation, wages, class time, shortage of staffing, and also interesting that you have an opportunity to build a building or you have opportunity to expand. But I think I was told that it's, you know, a large sum of money that you need to raise to do that. And I'm hoping it isn't through bake sales. That's all I want to say. So kudos to you guys. Thank you very much, Ashley and Kamiko. I really appreciate you being here. And by the way, I should have said that Ashley is the board chair and Kamiko is the vice chair of the center in Rosetown. Our next speaker is Vanessa Rose, and Vanessa is one of our coalition members, and she hails from Lloydminster. Also, Vanessa has done work across Canada, I believe in Newfoundland, and is doing some interesting work right now in Lloydminster, and obviously a lifelong advocate of quality, affordable, accessible childcare. So welcome, Vanessa.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Sue. I'm not sure if everybody.
Did we lose her?
His computer's glitching or just mine reason. So yeah, hey, everybody. So just to tell you, not about how I got here. I guess I worked as a director in several rural child care centers throughout the years. And then by the time I had my own children, I was about those who have come to me hoping I could solve their childcare woes. So I know when I was looking for childcare, it was a total panic mode. I know at one point I had 4 different providers in 4 months, and I was at my wit's end.
Vanessa, you're glitching out for us on your end. Why don't you try shutting off your camera and just speaking to us? That can sometimes be a great help when there's bandwidth issues. Perfect.
Okay. Can you hear me any better, guys?
Yes.
Yes.
So, did you hear anything I said or? Okay, so yeah, so I found myself like 4 different providers in just as many months. And like I said, for various issues, you know, some people decided not to do childcare anymore. Some I had some serious safety concerns. Like I was at my wit's end. I almost quit my job because it's like, I can't do this to my kids anymore. You know, they were getting bounced back and forth. And I have a friend right now who's looking for childcare, and she's still going through the same thing 10 years later. Like nothing has changed. Like my kids now are 16 and 13, and she's still having the same issues that I had, back then. And as Tanya and Ashley were saying, you know, it's a whole vicious circle. For parents, I mean, parents sometimes have to rely on families and their own parents, you know, for childcare. And a lot of people don't want to do that. You know, their parents are older and you know, and they feel like that's not a fair thing to do. Or anybody who's doing shift work is a total nightmare to find childcare, right? That's like, especially in a rural, you know, place. I mean, it's crazy. And sometimes people are doing piecework childcare where their child is going with someone this day and someone else this day. And we all know how, you know, consistency and routines are important for children. And, you know, children are being bounced around all over the place. And parents end up leaving their children with people that they don't fully trust and really question, but they feel like they're between that rock and the hard place. You know, what do? They have to go to work, you know. They don't have anything concrete to say that their kids are, you know, not being taken care of. But sometimes the mom has that gut feeling that their children are just not in that right place. And, you know, and the stress that that causes on a family is huge. And of course, not to mention the financial burden and all those things. And so as Ashley and Tanya were saying, I mean, it's a vicious circle because first of all, ECEs need to be treated as a professional career choice. I think that's the first thing. They need recognition of training and that's, you know, that's up there on par with everybody else. And I think that's a direction where it needs to go. And until that happens, I mean, childcare itself, unfortunately, is piecework. You know, anyone even has childcare center knows the staff. It's very frustrating, like for the daycare owners or, you know, the home providers. It's frustrating, and it's frustrating for parents. So like, I'm really looking forward and excited to see going to come out of this new initiative, childcare initiative, and hopefully some of these issues, you know, will be addressed, and we can definitely forward and reach some of the goals that are being set. I mean, I'm a huge supporter of childcare. I mean, I could talk about it for the choir. So you guys are all part of the choir. But as we know, it's hard to get quality when you're not paying out the money, right? So it goes hand in.
Definitely.
You know, first steps have to happen. It's great to open up buildings, awesome, but there's
Definitely.
no people to fill those spots, right? Oh, sorry.
We're having some problems hearing you,
So yeah,
Vanessa.
so yeah. Fiddle. Sorry, guys.
That's okay. I think we're getting the drift from even you and your short time with us.
I'm trying to think what anything else I can do to make this better. Is there anything I can do to make this better? I have no idea.
Well, you're here and you've given us a little lay of the land, which is perfect. So I know your experiences.
Anyway, so, oh yeah, everybody's free. Yeah, so like I said, it's we can't fill, you know, we can have buildings, but the buildings are no good without the people. So yeah. Absolutely. So I'm so sorry about my connection, and I will stop here because I know it's frustrating for you.
Well, I think that's another example of rural childcare and rural centers. Vanessa, it's another example of our rural centers and the challenges we have with remoteness all across the province. So I thank you for even being here and for trying to get through with us. Our next speaker that I'd like to introduce is Georgia LaValle. Georgia is the Executive Director of the Saskatchewan Early Childhood Association. They've done extensive work over the past on wages and working conditions for the sector itself. And they've been a partner along with a few others on a roadmap that we have created this past summer that we hope to take to the governments on how to improve things. Morna will speak a little bit more about that. But Georgia can give us an update on some of the things that they've been working on and probably echo some of the things we're hearing right now. So welcome, Georgia.
Thank you so much, Sue. I appreciate this opportunity. And I'd just like to acknowledge that I am joining you from Treaty 4 territory. And so I just want to acknowledge that. And so, as Sue said, I'm Georgia LaValle, and I'm the Executive Director of the Saskatchewan Early Childhood Association. We are a member-based association, and we support early childhood educators within our province. Our members consist of childcare centers, early learning and childcare homes, professionals, and we appreciate everyone's membership. If you're not sure, or if you haven't heard about us, please reach out to me. I'd love to talk to you more about it. The more members that SECA has, the louder voice our voice is much louder with the more members we have. Sorry, I just got so jumbled on my words. Anyway, so as Sue mentioned, we have been very busy with the roadmap to a quality early learning and childcare system in Saskatchewan. And the purpose of this document is to help support the growth of true policy in early learning and childcare. And so we've been working with the Canadian Childcare Federation, Care Now Saskatchewan Leaders Caucus, and Care Now Saskatchewan to share that roadmap. It's been shared with government, it's been received, and we have started doing webinars too to engage the sector. We want to hear from all of you. And so we had 2 webinars so far, the 13th and the 19th of this month. And Dawn Giesbrecht of the CCCF, Christopher Smith of the Matart Foundation, and Morna Ballantyne all presented. And through this webinars, both the webinars, I should say, there was an overview of the agreement, the action plan that's been set out by the government of Saskatchewan, and the roadmap as well. Now, the roadmap has 27 policy actions, so it's quite an undertaking. It's a long 30-page document, but if you have not read it yet, I highly recommend that you do. And within that webinar that we hosted, it talks about how we can support transitioning from a sector to a system. And so through that, they talked about the ideas and vision, policy changes around public policy, planning and management, which is huge, financing, and most importantly, workforce development and support, because as it was outlined, we need more early learning and early childhood educators in our province that are well compensated and well educated. So we have recorded that webinar. If you're interested in learning that, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. And so with that, I will pass it along.
Thank you. Thank you, Georgia. Thank you, Georgia. That was great. It's a quick update, but I really appreciate you being here. Yes, the roadmap has been a very good tool for us, and we're just starting to figure out how to utilize it and use it. With that, I'd really like to welcome Morna Ballantyne. Morna is the Executive Director of Care Now nationally, and our awesome leader who has been working with coalitions and organizations from coast to coast to coast, and can update us on how the provinces are doing and the actual agreements and things like that. Welcome, Morna.
Thanks so much, Sue. It's really wonderful to be in Saskatchewan virtually. Really happy to be with so many people who have joined the call. I am joining you from Ottawa, and Ottawa is located on the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. So I would like to acknowledge that at the start. As Sue said, I'm the Executive Director of Care Now, which is Canada's National Childcare Advocacy Association. We were founded in 1982. And to pick up on one of the things that that Vanessa said, we were founded way back then because so many people, so many parents, so many people in the community, so many people who were working in early learning and childcare saw all the problems that needed to be fixed, and decided that really government ought to do something about it, and particularly ought to move forward a key recommendation that had been made by the Royal Commission on the Status of Women more than 50 years ago, and that was to build a national system of high quality early learning and childcare for everybody who wants it and needs it. I want to just before I begin, I want to give thanks to the Canadian Women's Foundation. This webinar that we're having tonight for all of you in Saskatchewan is one of several that we're organizing across the country. And we're doing so because we received support from the Canadian Women's Foundation to do this project. Canadian Women's Foundation and Childcare Now have recognized that there are particular challenges that communities in rural Canada face and remote Canada face that some are the same and some are distinct when it comes to with respect to early learning and childcare. And the Canadian Women's Foundation, at our request, we said what we would really like to do is find ways to bring together people who live in rural communities to talk about the issue as a first step towards coming together on a more regular basis to take collective action, to not just talk about the problems, but actually bring forward solutions and make sure that governments listen and respond. So I do want to give big thanks to the Canadian Women's Foundation for their support. I really want to thank the speakers so far, Ashley and Kimiko, Tanya, and Vanessa, of course, Georgia, but I want to particularly thank those of you who really spoke from the heart and from your experience of what childcare, what the challenges are for childcare in rural Saskatchewan. And I'm really moved by your words and by your experience. You know, your stories are familiar, but every time I hear stories like the ones you've told, two things come to mind. One is incredible admiration and respect for the work that you do and your endurance and perseverance for being, you know, just doing everything you can for families in your community, for early childhood educators. So that's a huge part of my feeling, but what I was thinking and feeling when you were speaking. But I have to say that another part of me sparks anger and frustration. And it, you know, it is so amazing, you know, Tanya, the story you told about arriving in a community and everybody in the community being so excited because you are a trained, qualified early childhood educator, a director who has all this knowledge, and they grabbed hold of you and you helped them and you put it together and you got, you know, you got a program in place and you have done everything to make that possible with others in your community. I'm thinking about the families in that community who are so desperate that needed childcare. And, you know, it brings to mind, this is all, you know, governments have put this on individuals to figure out. If it wasn't for the Tanyas of rural Canada, you know, if it wasn't for parents who grabbed hold of people like Tanya to say, please help us, we need it, we would not have the programs that we have. And on the one hand, it's amazing, it's fantastic. On the other hand, it's kind of tragic. It seems unfair that this kind of responsibility falls on individuals, that families, parents, guardians of young children have to just make do and try to figure it out on their own to make sure that their young children have the opportunities for early childhood education and care. And it seems so unfair that the providers also on their own have to make it happen. And one of the key things that we've been saying is this has to stop. We need all kinds of people, individuals, to give it their best to make it work, but we need governments to step up. We need governments to start assuming responsibility and being accountable for helping you in your struggles so that you are not alone in this provision. That is really what our advocacy as our organization and others with the Canadian, the Federation, Canadian Childcare Federation, Georgia, SICA, others, Childcare Now Saskatchewan. This is really our mission, is to say to government, it's up to you. And right now we have the most extraordinary opportunity, incredible opportunity to force governments, encourage governments, pressure governments, whatever words we want to use, to step up and do it. And the extraordinary opportunity is that the federal government, after 50 years of trying to get the federal government to take leadership, to use its extraordinary, what we call fiscal capacity, because the federal government, unlike any other level of government, collects taxes from all citizens. They have much more money. They have a much stronger revenue base than any other level of government. So really important, we've always said that the federal government take up its responsibilities to try to make early learning and childcare happen and build a system. And finally, in the federal budget of 2021, it happened. Not just financially in that the federal government made a huge financial commitment to build a system, but it also made a policy commitment to do that. So in the 2021 budget, the federal government allocated $30 billion over the next 5 years to build what they're calling a Canada-wide system of early learning and childcare, and to implement a very important framework agreement, the Indigenous Early Learning and Childcare Framework, that was co-developed by Indigenous governments and organizations with the federal government, and sets out a path for responding and meeting the very particular needs of Indigenous children, families, and communities. So the government said $30 billion, we're going to put the Indigenous Early Learning Childcare Framework, start implementing it, and we're going to allocate $27 billion over the next 5 years to the provinces and the territories who we are going to work with to together build a Canada-wide system. And the federal government in its budget set some very good objectives. It said, and it understood, and it had, this didn't just happen. This was the result of decades of advocacy and a lot of persuasion from those of you who work in early learning childcare, those of you who are in unions. Your unions had did an incredible job over the last 50 years to bring this point home, to anti-poverty activists, to social justice activists, to women, the women's organizations. For so long, we've been saying to federal government, you have to do things, you have to do several things at once. You have to put in place policies, and you have to fund policies that will make early learning and childcare accessible and available to families, right? So you're gonna have to expand licensed childcare. From what it exists now, we need more, and we need it in every community, not where people happen for a bunch of circumstances to be able to set up a daycare, and do the kind of work, for example, that Tanya did, but everywhere. That we want this in every community. So we said, so they agreed that they had to work on access, expanding. They also agreed that they had to work on raising quality, ensuring we're talking about quality early learning and childcare, quality early childhood education. And they understood that key to that was ensuring that those who work in childcare are qualified, are highly qualified, and are supported in their professional development on an ongoing basis. And they understood, the federal government understood, that to do that, you need to pay quality wages and compensation, pensions, benefits, decent wages to early childhood educators. That's how you're going to recruit, and that's how you're going to retain. And they understood, of course, that the services have to be affordable, because as Vanessa said, she called it a vicious cycle, vicious circle. And I really agree with that. For decades, parent fees have been pitted against the wages and compensation of early childhood educators. We're constantly saying, if we need to pay early childhood educators more, then we're going to have to raise parent fees. And parent fees say, we can't do it, we can't afford to pay more. Well, the only way to deal with that is to say that the entire system has to be publicly funded, not individually funded by parents through parent fees. So we've been making that point to the federal government. So the federal government is now has entered into 12 agreements with 12 jurisdictions. There's only one province left to sign an agreement, and that's Ontario. And this agreement that was signed with Saskatchewan on August 13th, 2021, includes, at least in principle, some of these objectives: bringing down fees, expanding the number of licensed childcare programs, and addressing issues of compensation with respect to increasing quality. So the thing, though, is the details of how this is going to happen in Saskatchewan have yet to be completely worked out. And that is up to all of us. So that's where my big appeal is that, you know, everything that you've talked about, all the problems in rural Saskatchewan, I think can be addressed through building a proper, fully publicly funded and publicly managed system, so that rural communities, rural children, and rural families are not left alone to figure it out. That the provincial government steps up, works with municipal governments, works with local school authorities, works with the early childhood educator, the providers, to make it happen in a very systematic, proper, planned, managed way. They're not doing that yet, I don't think. It's up to us to make them do it that way. And that's where the roadmap comes in. Is the roadmap is, as you know, as Georgia said, there's 27 policy recommendations, very specific about what the Saskatchewan government has to do. One of the things we say the Saskatchewan government has to do is do it with the people of Saskatchewan. Consult, engage. This is a massive new social public program that is being developed. It belongs to the people of Saskatchewan, because the people of Saskatchewan are going to be essentially funding it through public funding. And this, as Sue, as you said at the beginning, governments can't do this on their own. They don't know how to do it on their own. We need to be there. I want to encourage everybody in this call, join up with Childcare Now Saskatchewan and get involved, stay involved. Those of you who are in rural communities, connect, continue to connect. We will help you with others in rural. Let's make sure the Canada-wide system of early learning and childcare includes rural Canada. Let's make sure that Saskatchewan's system of early learning and childcare includes rural Saskatchewan. And I'm absolutely convinced we can do it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Morna. I love the way Morna starts slow and builds up, and then I want to have a drum set, ba-boom, bang. Yes, you just hit the nail on the head. Thank you very much, Morna. Our last speaker this evening is Joan Gignac, who hails from British Columbia. I've heard her speak before. She's very motivational. So I'd like to leave this webinar with some hope and inspiration. And Joan, you're the woman to help us do that. So welcome, Joan.
Hello, everyone. Happy to be joining you today from the beautiful Klahoose First Nations territory in the Northern Gulf Islands in British Columbia. Thank you so much for the invitation. I am Anishinaabe and French. I'm a proud early childhood education professional for 31.5 years. I am an Aboriginal Head Start program professional for the last 26 years. And my position today is the Executive Director of the Aboriginal Head Start Association of British Columbia. Thank you so much for all the previous speakers and the chat box messages. Thank you so much for sharing. Sue has invited me to come to share with you, to provide a little bit of light to that, to your story, and say, have a vision. Your roadmap is your vision. You create the vision, and you are the people to make it happen. If you're waiting for government to do it, you're going to be unhappy with what they create. Inform it, participate, and make it happen. I will share with you in 2014, my board of directors, who are frontline childcare leads. They are Aboriginal Head Start coordinators. They had a vision. They said, we need quality Head Start childcare centers. We need more of them, and we need them to be well funded. We need our educators to be well compensated, and supported. We need that to be accessible to the children and families who need the most. We need it, what else are we inclusive, and all of the qualities of the roadmap and the vision of a childcare plan in Canada and here in the province of BC. Our board had that vision. Educators just like you, they had this vision and they drew it out, mapped it out in 2014, and we've been working towards it. We kept telling the story. In 2017, when the federal government began their start to begin funding childcare nationally, we were at the doorstep of our province and we were saying, this is what we can do. We can do this. You don't have to spend time to make it up. We've got the plan. We are here in 2022. We started off in 1995 to 2017 with 12 Head Start preschools in the province of BC that is federally funded. We helped to inform our British Columbia plan for the ELCC contribution to the province to also include a commitment to funding Aboriginal Head Start expansion in the province because they heard our story. They didn't have to create this plan. We have the plan. And so in the last 3 years, we've helped to grow our Head Start reach from 480 childcare spaces to 1,100 childcare spaces. And we are operating those childcare programs with high quality early childhood educators who are making a minimum of $25 an hour plus benefits. We had said we are not going to do this without that being our standard. We're actually raising that standard to be our minimum of $26 an hour plus benefits. And we've got it. All of our staff, that's the mandate. You cannot operate an Aboriginal Head Start program without that. And that's insurances. We've also included that we need a higher adult to child ratio than what our childcare regulations require, because we need that added support. The children need that added support, and the families need that added support. We put all of these, our expectations, our requirements, our intentions, this is what we need, and we're making it happen. We are living when I'm hearing what you're saying, what we want, what we need, we were there, but we made sure we kept being at the table. And there's a place for a rant, there's a place to grumble, but please be the ones with the answer. Be the ones with the solution, because you will be the ones who are most disappointed in the government's actions if you did not participate. So again, encourage it, it can happen. It's so exciting. I'm proud to be a part of this association. I'm proud to be an early childhood educator in British Columbia. I'm proud to be able to share the message that we are a profession. We need to be acknowledged and recognized. We need to attract incredible people to this incredible work because we make a difference. We make a difference in the lives of children. We make a difference in the lives of those families, and we ultimately impact and create healthier societies and communities. We matter. The quality of our work matters. So let's put the efforts into it. And I'm not meaning to be disrespectful. I know we're all putting that effort. I know the frontline educator is tired. Again, if you've got the rant, spend the time to think of what is our solution. Then if I'm going to take the time to rant, I'm going to take the time to help create a solution and be there and recognize it's going to happen. The federal government's commitment is there and the provinces are now signed on. So get there, help to inform, participate. This is a fabulous group of leaders here helping to create the venue for coming together, and you're together with, again, like minds. I see that we're at top of the hour. I do encourage you to give me a shout if you want to hear more, if you want to work together and support. What else is the opportunity? What other opportunities are here? Before closing, I will just say I'm excited for you also as a province. You do have 16 urban Head Start childcare programs across your province, many in very rural Saskatchewan, and you also have 70 First Nations Head Start programs across your province. partner. I encourage partnerships, collaboration. Don't do it alone, because there are people out there and we need to be able to be like the geese, flying in a V formation, take turns at taking the lead, jump in and support each other. We're going to make it happen, folks. Love the work that you do. Be proud of what you do, because you're freaking awesome. Thanks so much for the invite, everyone.
Thanks so much, Joan. I think that that's just the ticket we needed. I'm sorry to say that it is an hour already. I want to thank everyone for speaking tonight. Your enthusiasm is there. Your pain is there too. But I think it's such a hopeful time for us. And it's kind of unbelievable that it's hopeful in the middle of a pandemic and everything, but it's an opportunity for Saskatchewan to really have transformable change. So we've been waiting for this. A lot of people have been waiting for this for a lot of years, myself over 30. So I'm not going to give up for this. I just want to, wrap this up with some of the words that I've been hearing. It's we brought up issues of not enough staffing, wages and working conditions. We heard the need for pensions and salaries, benefits, compensation expectations. I'm hearing comments about communities not having a center and would liking a center. Hearing words of admiration, respect, and endurance and commitment, but yet anger that this hasn't happened, and it has been happening on the backs of a lot of individuals. But we're also hearing really important words that all of us need to be thinking about and sharing wherever we go, and being that person at the dinner table who talks about childcare all the time. Publicly funded, publicly managed. It is what we want. It is a new way of looking at things, and it is what Saskatchewan has signed on for. So, our speakers are correct. We need to have the vision. We've got one. It's called the roadmap. We know what we need to do, and all of us can do this together. For those of you that have to leave us right now, thank you so much for taking time to listen to us. Know that there is a coalition, there is a professional association working together to try and move this forward. We welcome your voice, your input at any time. Just give us a call. Thank you for the comments in the chat. As well as for those who would like to stay a little longer, we're going to give you an opportunity to move into some chat rooms to have a discussion. We'll try and capture some of your comments through a Google Doc that would be available. Erica will give us the, instructions on how we're going to do this. And again, thank you so much again to all our speakers. Your words are touching and motivational. And for all of you, hi, and thank you very much for your presentations. Erica?
Thank you so much, Sue. So as Sue mentioned, we will have an opportunity for folks who would like to stay a little bit longer to move into breakout rooms. And there'll be about 5 people in each room for the next 15 minutes. In these groups, we're going to ask that you please discuss challenges you've faced in rural childcare, as well as what changes and supports need to be implemented to adequately address these. I'd like to request that one person in your group volunteer as a note taker and one person volunteer as a facilitator. We want to ensure that everyone has an ample opportunity to share their thoughts and expertise. So that's where the facilitator comes in. As for the note taker, I will put a link into the chat where you will find a blank Google document with full edit access. In this document, the note taker may write down the changes and supports that your group recommends. This is particularly important as your expertise will be used to guide our rural childcare toolkit, as well as inform conversations we continue to have with policymakers. A little tip, when we did this exercise last week in Ontario, the pages filled up really quickly. So my recommendation is just to choose a different page for your group. And if all else fails and you can't do the Google Doc, worst case scenario, just write it in your own word browser and you can email it to me. I will put my email in the chat at the end. So without further ado, I am going to post that link to the document, and I will be sending you all off to breakout rooms momentarily. Thanks so much. All right, welcome back, everyone.
Well, again, my chat room, if my chat room was anything like the rest of you, it was very, very informative. Certainly great to hear people talking. It sounds to me like a lot of commonality in issues from top of the province to the bottom of the province. One thing to talk about the problems, but also there was a bit of hope in everybody's conversations. I guess what I really want to assure everyone is, the coalition, this chapter is new. We've only been around since the beginning of the summer. So we pledge to work very closely with you and, the organizations such as the Saskatchewan Early Childhood Association. We're working with labor and poverty groups and people from the universities, some strategists, parents, grandparents like myself, people coming out of retirement like myself. We're really hoping that we can keep the fire under the government to do what's needed to be done. So again, please, keep in touch with us. We hope to host more of these webinars. We, through the coalition, would like to update you regularly through, childcare chats and newsletters, as well as maybe webinars. And again, just really want to thank you for being here, and thanks everyone for their conversations. And for those of you who spoke tonight, thanks again. So thanks, everybody.